To me, Anadolu Efes is set up to be an incredible multi-bagger compounder in the coming years. And I believe that is the reason why Mohnish Pabrai is invested heavily in this company. After watching the entirety of this video, I believe you will also understand why. So first, I will go over the basics of their business. Then, we will see a clip from Mohnish Pabrai talking about the business, and after that, we will go over their financials. And finally, the powerful and the weak sides of the business, and why I think it is an incredible setup to be a long-term compounder. You can find the timestamps on the video, so feel free to jump wherever you find most interesting. And without any further ado, let's get into it. Also, please remember, I am not a financial analyst. These are simply my personal thoughts on the company. Anadolu Efes is a leading beverage company in Turkey and the region, producing and distributing beer, malt, and soft drinks under various brands. The company was founded in 1969 and has expanded its operations to 11 countries, serving hundreds of millions worldwide. Anadolu Efes is a subsidiary of Anadolu Group Holding, one of Turkey's biggest conglomerates, and is responsible for the conduct of Anadolu Group's operations in the beverages sector. Another shareholder of Efes is AB InBev with 24% ownership. AB InBev is the biggest brewery business in the world by far. In fact, based on production volume, they are more than double Heineken. So Efes has the access to best hands in the business. Anadolu Efes is operating as one of the most important players in its region. The company ships its products more than 70 countries, making more than 2/3 of its net sales in international markets. Anadolu Efes is the 5th largest brewer in Europe and 9th largest in the world by production volume. Efes runs its international beer operations through Efes Breweries International, also known as EBI. It's 100% subsidiary based in the Netherlands. The company also holds a 50.26% stake in Coca-Cola İçecek, also known as CCI, the 5th largest bottler of Coca-Cola products globally. CCI has a market cap of around $5.15 billion, so Anadolu Efes owns around $2.7 billion of value there. And in the coming minutes, you will see why I think that $2.7 billion is almost a gift that comes with Efes stock at current valuations. Now, before we go on to financials and the mode of the business, let's hear what Mohnish Pabrai has to say about the business.
Coca-Cola İçecek actually it's a listed company. It's 50% owned by Anadolu Efes. So the family that owns the bottling business owns half of Anadolu Efes, 50%. So there are two listed companies in Turkey. One of them is Anadolu Efes, and Anadolu Efes itself owns 50% of the Coke bottler. So if you think about the structure, basically, it's not exactly a holding company because it's actually got operations. So the family that owns it, actually their entire shareholding of Coca-Cola İçecek is sitting in Anadolu Efes.
I made this chart so it is easier to understand. Anadolu Group is the conglomerate that owns 43% of Anadolu Efes, and Anadolu Efes is the main shareholder in Coca-Cola İçecek with 50.26% ownership.
The Anadolu Efes beer business has a normalized market cap, normalized earnings on the beer side of about 200 million. But recently there was a transaction that took place. So Anadolu Efes is the #1 beer brand in Russia, for example. They have a number of countries. In fact, they're #1 in Turkey also, but their biggest business is in Russia. In Russia, their joint venture partner is the Anheuser-Busch people, 3G Capital, all those guys. And all these American companies are divesting the Russian assets. So Heineken sold their Russian business for $1. And basically AM InBev doesn't want to sell the Russian business, but they have to. So they recently, this has been going on for about a year and a half. When I met the company, they would say, yeah, we are negotiating with them, we're trying to figure out what works. The family that owns Anadolu Efes and Coca-Cola İçecek is one of probably the highest reputed families in Turkey from a governance point of view, reputation point of view. So the partners they have in their different businesses are truly world-class partners. And so, for example, the family also has all the McDonald's franchises in Turkey. It's a private, they've not listed that, they just own that. And Coke in Atlanta owns 20% of Coke İçecek, and they sit on the board. and InBev owns 20% of FS, and they sit on the board. So they just announced recently that InBev decided to sell the 50% of the business that they did not own to FS. And they did not really discuss a lot of things about the deal. What they said is FS is paying nothing to InBev, zero. And over the next few years, based on earnings, there will be some payments. So one of the things you've got to understand is a seller agreed to sell with nothing down. And that's part of the reason that because the reputation of the family is so strong, that the seller is not going to have any concerns that I won't get my money or what might happen in the future, any of that. They have no concerns about that. And the FS in their negotiations would not have squeezed InBev because they want a 50-year relationship, 100-year relationship with them.
I believe this part is especially important. Anadolu Efes is not trying to squeeze the last dollar from its business partners, because they want to have long-term relationships with them. That is a very much Buffett-like approach, and I just love it.
So it's a good symbiotic thing, but basically bottom line is that in that press release, the InBev people said that we think our 50% of the business is worth about 1.3 billion. And they didn't really say anything else beyond that implying that maybe they'll get maybe 1.3 billion over a few years or something. So FS market cap is 2.5 billion. And so they now have 100% of the beer business, which should be worth at least 2.5 billion, just the Russia beer business. They also have Ukraine, which is about 1/4 the size of Russia.
Here's what I mean by saying that CCI is just a gift that comes with FS. $2.5 billion for just their biggest beer market. Remember that they are also the market leader in Turkey and Ukraine as well.
They shut down the operations there. So at some point if the war ends, they had closed all their breweries, but they just opened 1 or 2 of their breweries now recently. They looked at the areas where they were safe to open, and they have #1 market share in Ukraine as well, so they've started producing there, and they've got a few other countries. And so if you look at the FS beer business in total, it's 34 million hectoliters. And just to give you a context, India's entire beer market is 65 million hectoliters. So FS's beer business is more than 50% of all of India. And UB, which is much smaller than FS in volumes, has a 5.5 billion market cap. So FS by itself has a lot of value, but inside FS is 50% of the Coke bottler. And I own shares in FS, and I own shares in Coke, and I don't own shares in Varun, just as a disclosure.
Now, this is the table where I tracked Anadolu Efes's earnings. And here are a couple of notes before we go over that. Anadolu Efes is the parent company of CCI, so they fully take their earnings into their earnings table. So when you analyze this company, you will do better to look at the profits attributable to owners of parent line, because that line represents the real earnings of FS. And in this table, I tracked the earnings for every quarter, and I translated them to dollars using the exchange rate at the final day of every quarter. On the line beneath the earnings, you can see the year-over-year growth in USD terms for each quarter. Anadolu Efes will release their earnings for the final quarter in March. But in Turkey, firms are now required to use inflation accounting, and I think it will take some time to wrap our heads around it, so I didn't want to wait for that. And as you can guess, since I only took the lira earnings from their reports and adjusted it to dollars on my terms, the numbers you see here are non-GAAP earnings. In fact, it is not anything, it's just how I track the business myself. So the loss-making period in the end of 2021 and early 2022 was mostly capex as far as I can see. And other than that, they were growing at very high rates in 2023, from $9 million loss to $21 million profit in the first quarter. Almost 30% growth in the second quarter and over 50% growth in the third quarter of 2023. These are all year-over-year growth numbers. Of course, because I only keep track of earnings in this table, it might be misleading without the revenues. So now, looking at their revenues and margins from their cap site, we can see their margins have gone up significantly in 2023. 2023. It went from 6% in 2021 to 6.67% in 2022, and for the first 3 quarters of 2023, it went up to an incredible 12%, which might explain why the stock is up 47% on dollar basis since the beginning of 2023. And it also paid a couple percentage points of dividends during that time as well. But looking at the bigger picture, it is down from almost $18 in 2013 to $4.5-5 range currently. So investing in the international markets can be dangerous if you don't know what you are doing. But also, I think that's what Mohnish Pabrai means when he says the baby got thrown away with the bathwater. I mean, this is a business that is the 5th largest brewer in Europe and 9th largest in the world by production volume. Also, there has been a huge amount of multiple contraction happening during that time, all while CCI and Efes brands got stronger in my opinion. Before we go on to balance sheet, you have to remember that since Efes owns over 50% of CCI, they consolidate them in their financials. But if you read their annually and quarterly reports, you can see how much money the brewery business alone is making. And as you can see in this table, they have made 4.1 billion liras in the first 9 months of 2023. So I would expect the full year earnings to be at least 5 billion liras. So CCI's market cap is around 160 billion liras. Efes owns 50.26% of it. So their share is 80.54 billion liras. The total market cap of Efes is almost 90 billion liras. So that means that the market is currently pricing the standalone brewery business at 9.5 billion liras while they are making 5 billion annually. So less than 2 times earnings for the brewery business. And remember that they are the 5th largest brewery in Europe and 9th largest in the world by production volume, as I said many times earlier. Also, a quick look at their balance sheet. Their current assets are 89 million liras, while their total liabilities are 114 billion liras. But they have 106 billion liras in non-current assets. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a rock solid balance sheet. Now, here is a map that shows the areas both Anadolu Efes and CCI operate in. The blue dots are Efes and the red ones are CCI. Looking at this map, other than Germany, most of these countries have huge populations, but they are still developing countries, meaning that while their current spendable incomes are lower compared to the countries like Germany and United States, their growth is expected to be higher, and as their spendable income rises, the consumption of the products that Efes and CCI produce are expected to rise higher as well. So in my opinion, the areas they operate in are offering good growth prospects. I believe that is also why a company like Varun Beverages, the Pepsi bottler of India, is trading at almost 100 times earnings, because everybody knows that India's growth prospects look incredible. While that is the case, CCI is the superior Coca-Cola bottler in Pakistan and now Bangladesh, which gave them an additional almost 100 million new customers. And maybe in the future, they can be the Coca-Cola bottler in some areas of India as well. So CCI's growth prospects are looking great. But the same can be said about Efes as well. Anadolu Efes is well positioned within the industry, as it has a diversified portfolio of brands, a strong distribution network, a strategic alliance with AB InBev, and a significant presence in the emerging markets. So the strengths of Anadolu Efes are a strong brand portfolio that includes leading beer brands such as Efes, Bomonti, and Tuborg, as well as popular soft drink brands with the CCI. A wide geographic reach that covers Turkey, Russia, the CIS, Southeast Europe, and the Middle East, with access to large and growing customer base. A strategic partnership with AB InBev, the world's largest brewer, that allows the company to leverage AB InBev's global scale, expertise, and resources. A robust financial performance that demonstrates the company's resilience and profitability amid the 2020 and other market challenges. Anadolu Efes also has some opportunities that could enhance its growth prospects, such as the growing demand for low alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages, especially among health-conscious and younger customers, which could create new segments and revenue streams for the company. And at this point, I feel like I should say that I do not support the consumption of any alcoholic products. The potential expansion into new geographies and product categories, such as Africa, Asia, and functional beverages, which could diversify the company's revenue sources and reduce its reliance on mature and saturated markets. However, Anadolu Efes also faces some threats that could hamper its growth and profitability, such as the rising consumer awareness and activism on environmental and social issues, which could increase the pressure on the company to adopt more sustainable and responsible business practices, as well as expose it to reputational and legal risks. The fierce competition from both global and local players in the beverage industry, which could erode the company's market share, pricing power, and brand loyalty, as well as force it to increase its marketing and promotional expenses. But I believe that this threat only applies to Efes' side, because I don't think the same can be said for the Coca-Cola products. I think it is really hard, if not impossible, to find a moat as strong as the Coca-Cola brand. So now, let's look at risks and the challenges. The uncertainty and volatility of the macroeconomic and political environment of the markets where the company operates, which could affect the company's sales, costs, and profitability, as well as expose it to currency fluctuations, inflation, and interest rate changes. Also, the regulatory and the tax changes that could affect the beverage industry, such as the introduction of new excise duties, minimum pricing, health warnings, or advertising restrictions, which could increase the company's compliance costs and reduce its consumer demand. So, in conclusion, Anadolu Efes is a leading beverage company in Turkey and the region, with a strong brand portfolio, a wide geographic reach, and a strategic partnership with AB InBev, and a robust financial performance. The company also has some opportunities to grow its business, such as the increasing demand for low alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages, the potential expansion into new geographies and product categories. However, the company also faces some weaknesses and threats, such as the rising consumer awareness and activism on environmental and social issues. And as always, the competition from both global and local players. So you may ask yourself, why is it so cheap? Why is it down from $18 to under $5 and it is still there? Now, I'm going to be honest. I do not have an answer for you. But for me, I try to invest looking at the windshield rather than the rear view mirror. I believe that the future prospects of CCI look incredible. And the fact that the brewery business is trading at less than 2 times earnings with a good balance sheet and more than 50 years track record of good business by the company, I find Efes to be a good place to invest my capital. That is why I am currently 13.5% invested in this company. But then again, I am not an analyst. I just wanted to explain why I am so bullish on the business. So this video was more focused on Efes. But if you want to learn more about CCI, you can check my 2 videos on it. And I would definitely suggest reading Turkshire Hathaway Substack's coverage of it. I will leave it in the description. Also, due to the business Efes is doing, this video may not be fully monetized. So I would really appreciate your help with it. So please leave a like, subscribe, and ring the bell if you like the content. And thank you very much for watching till the end. I'll see you in the next one.